Hey guys, so here is part 2 of the 4.8 day 2 notes. We are continuing on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So don't forget, with the quadratic formula, we have to make sure our equation is set equal to 0 first. So let's look at this next example. We have solve negative x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. Is this quadratic equation set equal to 0? Yes. So now we can identify our a, b, and c values. Now, whenever we do the quadratic formula, it actually does not matter that your a value is positive or negative. Really, whenever we want our a value to be positive is when we have completing the square or when we are factoring, because otherwise it makes them more complicated. But with quadratic formula, it's all good. Okay, so our a value here is going to be -1, our b is going to be 4, and our c is going to be -5. So let's plug that into our formula. We have opposite of b, which in this case is going to be -4 plus or minus square root. We do our b squared, remember please use parentheses, -4 times our a, which is -1, times our c, which is -5. And that's all over 2 times our a value, which is -1. Okay, now we're going to use our calculator like we did before. Please use your calculator, okay? It makes it a lot easier. So what we see underneath the square root, we're going to plug it into our calculator. So first I do parentheses 4 squared. Then I do the minus sign, 4 times. Make sure you use the negative to represent negative numbers. If you use the subtraction, it will say error. And then another parentheses for the -5. And when we do that, we get -4. Remember, what's underneath the square root, that is actually our discriminant. So we have the discriminant of -4. How many solutions and what type are we going to get here? Hopefully, you said that we're going to have 2 imaginary solutions or complex solutions. So let's see if we get that, and hopefully we do. Okay, so we got -4 underneath that square root. Let's remember that. So I get x equals -4 plus or minus square root of -4 over -2. Now, the reason we don't use the square root in the calculator is because that would give us either an error, okay, because this is a negative underneath the square root sign, or it's going to give us a decimal, which we don't want. Okay, now let's look at this. We have -4. Remember, when we take the square root of a negative, what happens here? Yes, we're going to have imaginary solutions, okay? Now, is 4 a perfect square? Yes. So let's kind of think about this here. So whenever we talked about complex solutions and imaginary numbers, we have -4. Remember, we kind of do our 2 branches. We have the square root of 4 and square root of -1. So rewriting this as x equals -4 plus or minus. We know square root of 4 is 2. And then we have the -1. Square root of -1 means that is I. So always replace that. Then in the denominator, we have -2. Now we need to make sure we write our answer, because this is a complex solution, in standard form. So we talked about this a lot, especially when we did our 4.6 day 2 and day 3 notes. That's when we added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided complex numbers. So we're going to take the real number. So that's going to be the -4 over -2. So let's simplify that. So -4 divided by -2 gives us a +2. Now, don't forget that plus minus sign, because remember, the plus minus represents there's actually 2 solutions. Now we do 2i over -2. Okay, so now when we do that, we get -1i. Now, you can either write it as -1i or -i. It's really up to you. I'm actually going to rewrite this so we can see more steps. So we add -4 over -2, and then the plus minus sign, and then 2i over -2. Now I'm going to actually rewrite this so you guys can see this a little bit better. So we got 2 plus or minus, and as I said, that 2 over -2, you can either write it as -1 or just a -i. I'm just going to write it as a -i to give that to me. So now my final solutions, and it is written in standard form, because we have our a, which is the real, and then we have our imaginary part. So we have 2 plus a negative I and 2 minus a negative I. And those are our two complex solutions. Okay, let's do our last example. On this one, I would like you guys to go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own. Okay, let's see what you got. So first of all, we notice that x squared minus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0, so we don't need to move anything over. So we're going to identify our a, b, and c values. A is 1, b is negative 6, c is 8. So plugging this in, we have opposite of b, that gives us a positive 6. And then I have negative 6 squared minus 4 times our a value times our c, and that's all over 2 times a. So now I'm going to plug what's underneath the square root sign in my calculator. Please always do that. You can try it in your head, but I say if you are allowed to use a calculator, please do so. Okay, we do parentheses. Negative 6, don't forget, always put this in parentheses, minus 4 times 1, and then times 8. So we get 4. So since our value is 4, which is greater than 0, what type of solutions do we get and how many? You should have said we should get 2 real solutions. So let's hopefully make sure we do. Okay, so I have 6 plus or minus square root of 4 over 2. Now, this 4, is that a perfect square? Yeah. So now we have 6 plus or minus 2, because the square root of 4 is 2, over 2. So this is going to show that we are going to get real numbers. So we need to make sure we separate these values to get our answer. So here, I have my 6 plus 2 over 2, and then my other solution is going to be 6 minus 2 over 2. Now you might be wondering, where did that plus and minus? Remember, we have our plus minus in between the 6 and the 2 here. Okay? So don't forget, that does represent we have 2 solutions, 2 of them. Okay, so on the first one, we do 6 plus 2, that gives us 8 over 2, which gives us 4. The other one, we do 6 minus 2, that gives us 4 divided by 2, which gives us 2. So we do get 2 real solutions, and those 2 real solutions are 4 and 2. Okay, don't forget, if you have any questions, make sure you contact me, and then make sure you work on the homework assignment. See you guys later.